My name's Rochelle Matuk, and this is my story. From the ages of 6 to 12 years old, so that's a total of 7 years, I was molested by my uncle. My uncle was my father's youngest brother. He was probably in his mid to late 20s, while I was obviously 6 years old. And he was a very integral part of our family. Now, we saw him all the time. It was a very close-knit Middle Eastern family. So we come from a Lebanese background. So it was a matter of, we're going to go see your grandparents. He lived with my grandparents. He was still living at home with his parents. We would see them every week, every couple of days. Some weeks it'd be every single day. We were either at their house, they were at our house. It was literally a 5-minute drive away. So it was a part of our life that was inevitable. We were always going to be around family. Now, the way this starts is going to be quite explicit. I'm going to detail and explain the abuse to a degree to give you enough understanding of what it is and how it happens. A lot of people have a rough idea. For the last 50 episodes, I've been explaining that I was molested as a kid by my uncle, but I haven't explained it to the detail so people actually understand what it is. Even till this day, my family don't know exactly what happened, only besides my mum and my husband, who have both read the police report, which were very detailed descriptions of all the situations that I had to account for. Now, please understand that there is a trigger warning here. If you are uncomfortable to listen, please turn it off when you're in your own time, when you're ready. You can listen to have this, as a bit more information or knowledge. I don't think this is a question of whether it's age appropriate for everyone. I think everyone should be able to hear this. I will keep it detailed but simple. Because I'd like people to have a good understanding, and I'd like, whether it's parents or children, to understand what these behaviors or actions are that are considered wrong, and how you can get caught out or trapped or groomed. So I'm going to break it down. Now, over the 7 years that I was molested, it was not a once a blue moon situation. It was a weekly thing. It was occasional. It wasn't occasional. It was on a weekly basis. So I would see him, like I said, anywhere from 3 to 5, 6, 7 times a week. And on each account, not only grooming would occur towards my family and to everyone else so that he could obviously build a trust, but grooming towards myself. And eventually, the grooming became, from a verbal sense and from an environmental sense, became behavioral and became like it encroached on my personal space, and eventually turned into what ended up being me being molested. I've never had to discuss this besides once before with the police, who asked me for an account or 5 accounts of when this happened, and I got the shits because I was like, well, it happened every single day. Like in 1 week it happened 5 times, but they asked for the most detailed accounts of when it happened, and the most traumatic, and it's all traumatic, it's all detailed. But there were key times where it was quite intrusive, quite aggressive, or quite extra disgusting. I don't even know how you could put it. It doesn't really make sense to put into words, but I'm going to try and give you a bit of a timeline and a bit of accounts. So we grew up in a very open family. We were very educated. My parents had, at the age of 5, had the discussion with me about if someone touches you, if someone does this, you speak to us, they're not allowed to do this. And I had the understanding. So I had the knowledge, and it's not a matter of if I had the knowledge. It was a matter of being manipulated, and at an age where I had no power. You see someone older than you that has power and can manipulate and can groom you. And this person unfortunately groomed our entire family. So what does grooming look like? We would hang out, we would play games. He was he taught me most of my sports alongside my dad, taught me how to video games, taught me how to do everything that I enjoyed as a kid, because he was still a big kid in himself. And we used to, we bonded over sports and fitness and all the rest. And so it was easy for him to kind of fit his way into my life and my path. So it was a matter of him being integrated with a common interest, and the common interest was sport. So every sport I learnt playing with him and my father. So if we were at a park and someone didn't want to play, he'd get up and play with us. If I was at my grandparents' house and all the older adults were hanging out, he would be with all the young kids mucking around playing with us. So he ingrained his kind of path in the family as this like child protector, child mentor, loves to play with the kids, loves to play sport. Now, a big red flag here is that he would put his hand up first to be that person, over the parents. No, it's all right. I've got the kids. Let me take them. Let me go. And you don't notice that as a parent, but over time, now in hindsight, I look back and I go, as a kid, I'm like, oh, well, he had every opportunity and he made sure they felt comfortable with him around us because we enjoyed his company. Now, that's not to say that if a kid is enjoying someone's company, it's a bad thing. But that's the first stages of grooming, is that we had comfort in his approach, in his behavior. And then his behavior got a little bit more personal. The behavior became inappropriate in regards to just silly language that you wouldn't speak around a child. Like little secrets. He'd say, oh, let me tell you a secret, and then whisper in your ear or lick your ear, and it was no secret, and you just laugh it off as a kid and go, okay, cool, this is obviously nothing. He'd hug you and grab you really tight, and then you'd realize he's poking his genitals into you from the behind. And, you just think, oh, he's giving you a big hug. But in hindsight now, you look back and you can see, and then when we spoke to everyone else, they all experienced these weird anomalies of just like him trying to push the boundary with how he could connect, or how he could almost get us into an environment that felt like it was safe, even though he was pushing the boundary. So from tickling and cuddling and tackles, we played a lot of football. So you'd get tackled to the grass and, a hand would slip up the shirt and grab you or grope you, or a hand would go up like your skirt or your shorts, it was all within a playful, and we're talking about there's a family involved, there's parents around, we're at a picnic, we're at a barbecue. Like, it just doesn't look unnormal or abnormal or unrealistic, or it doesn't look like it's inappropriate. It just looked like we're all mucking around. But those modes of touching and manipulation started to layer and layer and layer over time. So I'm going to start with the first big pinnacle moment where I experienced the actual abuse to its full extreme. So I was 7. This was the most, it happened previous, but this was like the lead up, and then this is where it kind of, you realize now that this was the big thing. So I was 7 years old. My mum and dad had never let us be babysat by anyone. My grandparents used to look after us, but no cousins, aunties, uncles, no one ever looked after us. So there was a family birthday. It was my cousin's 21st on my mum's side. And God rest his soul, he had a beautiful 21st, but there were no kids invited. So my mum and dad were like, oh, well, they just brought it up in a conversation. And my uncle put his hand up, say, oh, look, don't worry, I can look after the kids. Now, this is a first. He's never reached out to say, I'll look after the kids in a babysitting manner, but he's obviously groomed his way in that they're comfortable enough with this human to look after their kids, because, oh, mate, we have a blast with him. We have a great time. He keeps us entertained, etc. Now, I'm 7, Natalie's 5, and Jade, that means, is 3. So we got 3 girls in a house. Now, it's a nighttime birthday, so they go off. And I vividly remember we're all watching TV, and mum and dad put my sisters to bed. And pretty much it's just a matter of looking after me while they go out. My sisters are pretty young, they're asleep. And it's a matter of just like making sure kids are okay, and I'm allowed to stay up a little bit later. So we're sitting down and we're watching TV, and my uncle's laying on the couch, and I'm just sitting like where his feet are on the couch. And, we're just watching whatever. I don't even remember what we were watching. That's the funny thing. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, it's hot, isn't it? And it was actually a quite warm night, and I'm like, yeah, it is. He goes, come here. And I'm like, oh, okay, no question about it. And he's like, okay, I'll cool you down. And he undresses me. And in that moment now, when I dug, and I've done a lot of self-digging and trying to figure out what the hell happened, I shut off. All I remember was staring at the TV, and all I could see was colors and just like pictures flashing. And I dialed into my pajamas while he was taking them off, and I looked at the buttons, and I had these light, like whitey pink pajamas with little teddy bears on them, and the buttons, they were like a clear, shimmery white. And I just remember dialing into that, and so he took my clothes off and emotion disconnected. And then, so he's just gone straight at, okay, do you feel better now? It's not hot anymore. I'm like, and all I remember was nodding because I didn't know what to say. And then he grabs his hand, places it between my legs, and starts playing with me. And all he asked is that hurting? And I just shook my head. And I remember just standing there frozen, like I didn't know what to say or didn't know what to do. And the time kind of lapses over, and I don't know how long it was, but it was long enough that I remember just standing there, and like the TV show goes on, that commercial goes on, the show goes on, the commercial goes on. And then all of a sudden I just grab my pants and I kind of pull them up, and I put my pajama top on, and he goes, and he exposes himself. He pulls himself out and starts playing with himself, and he goes, oh, come and touch me. And in that moment, I had this like choked up experience, choked up feeling, and I was like, he's like, come, it's okay, you can do it. And I was like, I'm going to bed. And I remember those words, I'm going to bed. And I just froze, and it was like he realized, okay, cool, we're not gonna get that far tonight. And I walked off to bed, climbed up to my bunk bed, and put myself to bed and went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, I don't remember anything. I don't remember a feeling, an emotion. I don't remember my parents asked me how our night was. I don't remember anything. Even now, to the days of like me trying to explore what happened moving forward, it's like a survival instinct of completely negating everything that happened and moving forward. And the next time we saw him, everything was normal. You don't even remember. And then eventually this layers. So then over time, he was always very affectionate, overly affectionate with me, hugs and touching and like stroking and caressing my arm. And then again, there was another pinnacle moment. So now along the years, he was always in contact with me. There was always groping, there was always touching, inappropriate touching, but there were those pinnacle moments where like that, it was a scenario secluded where the manipulation and the abuse was happening very prevalent in that moment. So again, I don't rank anything as worse or less disgusting, but they were more, say, horrid situations. Then we would always be around family. The funny thing is there was always people around. He used to like to risk his behavior, so he would try and get away with it while people are around. It was like this game for him. He would play with the idea of being almost caught. It was like some kind of adrenaline junkie rush. And I vividly remember scenarios being in my grandparents' house where all the adults would be in the back, they'd be playing cards, they'd be cooking, eating, and he'd be in his room, and he had like his shitty bedroom and a little kind of spare room that he'd have a computer on, and he's always playing like gambling games or games, and he'd like try and lure the kids in, oh, come play this game, come sit on my lap. And over time, it was like I had this understanding that he was going to do something wrong, so I would pull the kids out of the room and I would take their place. And I vividly remember that. I remember speaking to my younger sister, and she goes, I remember you saying, oh, no, don't go in there, come here, and you would go in there. And because he'd like have them sitting on his lap and he'd whisper something into their ear, and I remember watching him do that to the cousins, whisper something into his ear, and he'd like lick their ear or do something stupid. I was like, oh, this is going to get bad. And it was like an innate response to just say, hey guys, come on, let's go play outside. And I just walk in and sit in the room, and it would happen to me again, groped, touched, And this is all inside my clothing, on my actual skin-to-skin contact, all the rest. So he wasn't like hidden about it. The doors were open. So if someone was walking to the bathroom, they could catch him out, but it was like he would just risk it. Another scenario, we were at my parents' house and we were all playing video games. So we used to love Crash Bandicoot. We used to play, and we were stay up till late at night with my dad, and we'd all play. And one day my grandparents were over and we were playing, the kids were playing, he came and joined us. And next to us, so it was literally a small lounge room with like a little sliding door. Literally, you can hear them next door to you. If you sneeze, if you cough, if you sniff your nose, you can hear. Were next door to us, and they were playing cards. And they were kind of cycling. It was a game 400. 4 of the adults were playing, and they'd cycle my uncle in and out when one of them lost. So he lost. He came and he sat playing PlayStation with us, and they're all, you know, into the game, and my sister's in the room playing with us, and he's kind of like put me on his side near him, and he's like playing and he's like hugging me. And then that's while my sister's in there, and then my sister's kind of walk out, and then like he puts his hand up my back under my clothes, and then he like puts his hand down my pants, and then and then he realizes he can hear my sister's kind of running in, and he moves his hands and he keeps playing. And I remember just being frozen, and I'm just like, okay, and I'm just going to keep playing, and I'm just going to keep playing, and I'm just going to avoid this, I'm going to ignore this. And I'm hoping someone just opens the door next door, or someone hears something. And I remember that feeling of wishing someone just walked in, because they're there, but no one can see it. And reality is you don't look for it. And it's not to say that people should always be looking for it, but you should be vigilant, you should be seeing stuff. And my sisters ran out again, and they were playing a game, and they were still playing cards, and then he puts his hand under, and I'm playing, and I'm having my turn, and he's literally going at it. And I was like, I just kept playing and like ignoring it. And it goes on for a few minutes, and I remember like an actual few minutes of like him in the same, because my sisters hadn't walked in, you could hear them running in. And then I remember hearing someone like opening their dining chair, like you can hear the scratches on the floor, and he moves his hands because obviously someone's moving from the game and gonna come in and just keep playing. And it's like, okay. And then again, blackout, nothing else, don't remember it, no instances. So scenarios like this were very common. People don't realize that it happens while you're there. They'll risk it. They'll try and be involved in every aspect of your life, and then on the side they'll sneak in and they will manipulate. They will abuse. They will do whatever necessary so they can get their fix or whatever it is. He had opportunities where we would have to, back in the days, you would have to hire movies. So Video Easy was somewhere we would always go as a family. We'd hire movies, and it was a matter of like, oh shit, we got to go and put the movie back. He would always offer, oh, I'll take the movie, and Rash, you come with us, Rochelle, come with us, and you can jump in. I'll just stop the car in the front. You can jump in and drop the movie off. And this was multiple occurrences. And Mum, they're like, yeah, go, you can take it, you can drop it off. So, you know, in a car, you're in public, what the hell? So at every stoplight, he would grope and fondle and get into my clothes and always do the same thing. And we'd get there. I was like, thank God I can get out of the car, put it in. I was like, I've got to get back in this car. So you would just again block it out, and you'd just be a robot. You would just be a robot. Now, mind you, I'm getting older and I understand this behavior, and it's almost like you will put your hand up to be in the situation so no one else ever dares to. So I could read off him when he's in that mood, and it's like we'd be at my grandparents' house and you could see, and I'm like, oh fuck, these poor kids. I'm like, hey, can you give me a massage? Can you rub my shoulders, please? And I'm really sore from kicking the footy around or like whatever, playing basketball. And then it was like, you just knew it was like, I felt like at one point I fueled it, but I know that it was, and I look back now and I know it was a protection mechanism. It was like, you could see him prying on the others, and you're like, no, you've damaged me. I'm here, go. And this happened for years and years and years. And holiday houses, he would come with us on holidays. My parents were amazing. They would invite everyone. They would pay for a whole holiday, 2-week holiday down the South Coast, and invite people over, and people would just come and rock up and would have a great time. And one year he was there, and and again, another red flag. My dad and him, they would always go fishing. We would go fishing. We grew up going fishing. And one of the days he's like, my mum's like, oh, to my dad, oh, let's go fishing. Let's go down. We'll go for a walk and we'll go fishing. And dad's like, yeah. And he goes to him, hey, let's go. And he goes, oh, no, I'm not bothered. And he would never say no to fishing. He was like, oh, no, just, I'm going to hang out here. I'll look after the kids. You guys go. Yeah, that's a red flag. Because I think even that scenario, my sisters remember seeing inappropriate behavior, and we're coloring and drawing and whatnot, and he grabs me again. My sister, he tells my sisters to go, oh, I want you to go over there and I want you to do something, then come back and show it to me. So he had a prime opportunity to be by himself with me, and then expose himself. And again, all the same behavior in prime opportunities where he's made sure he's either by himself, so he has control over us, or in a situation where he can hear when people can come in and whatnot, but he's risking it, and he's almost extra stimulated by the fear of it all, so or the excitement of it all for him. So this was a continuous cycle. This would happen on numerous accounts. The more detailed scenarios happened in obviously less volume than the everyday groping and touching and manipulation and grooming and abuse. And this happened for all those years. And then the point of when I obviously did my research and starting to understand where you have different predators, and certain predators will be towards the adolescents, and once you turn a teen, they're no longer, interested. And I remember kind of being about 13 years old, and it just it didn't happen anymore. I had obviously a lot more strength. I had a lot more independence. I wasn't hanging around with the family as much in those scenarios. I'd be playing with my own friends, and eventually I just kind of grew up, and we would still see him, we'd still hang with him, we'd still play sports with him. He was still a part of our family, but it was like it just didn't happen. And then there was the epiphany moment. So I was 16 years old, and it was New Year's Eve. My parents and we were at the South Coast, our beautiful holiday home that we would rent every year. And we were watching a movie together. It was New Year's Eve, so we're all just hanging out, watching a movie, and then they're flicking through, and a movie was on. And I don't remember what the movie was, but all I remember, there was a bench seat in a park, and a gentleman was sitting on the park, and he says to this little girl, come sit on my lap. And obviously it was one of those police shows or something where someone's being groomed or molested or whatnot. It was meant to be one of those scenes, but nothing happened, but it was just in that. And all of a sudden I had this rush or this feeling in my body like something's wrong. I don't know what it was. And then we were just talking in general, and because New Year's is tomorrow, so we're meant to have a party. My birthday is New Year's Day. And my dad's like, oh, your uncle just messaged, and he said, unfortunately, he's unable to make it this year. And I'm like, hey, mum and dad. He said those lines, and I said, hey, mum and dad, I'm going to bed. I don't feel well. I'm tired. They're like, oh, okay, good night. And I go to bed, and all I remember was I felt like I wanted to take a knife with me. I just had this feeling of I felt disgusting, but I need a knife. Anyway, so I remember walking to bed. It was like a zombie mode. I walked to bed and I fell asleep, and I woke up in hysterics. No one knew, no family members knew. I just woke up, and it was like I had the worst nightmare of my life. Every memory, every circumstance, every instance, every feeling flooded back. And in that moment, I remembered everything. And it wasn't a matter of it's a dream, I'm questioning it. It was my brain and my body were ready to accept, you're capable now to deal with this shit. So here it is. And enough's enough, it's time. And it was like the trigger of watching that little show, that snippet from the movie, and then mentioning his name just put it all together. And I rang my best friend at the time, Will, and I'm like, hey dude, I've just had a nightmare, and I just remembered all this shit that just happened to me. I don't know what to do. And he was like, and he was younger than me, and he's like, oh, we need to tell my brother. And his brother was also my best mate, Lommel, who was a little bit older. And he was like, we need to tell him because I'm not sure what to do. Like, you know, he was at probably 15. He was about 2 years younger than me. So young kids, I'm talking to young kids, no one knows what the hell's going on. And his brother being 18 at the time. So like, you know, he's maybe a little bit more mature to figure out what the hell to do. He goes, look, where are you? And I said, you know, I'm on holidays. He goes, any way to get back? And we're 3 hours away, so there was nothing. So I remember just being a zombie the rest of the trip. I shut off, I just ignored it. And then we go back into the real world. And again, for a while, I don't say nothing. I go back to school. And so January, obviously, so by February, you're back at school. And this is where I've kind of hung out with my friends again, and I've seen them, and I've seen the two best mates, the brothers. And I go up to the older one, and he goes, we have to tell your friends, like my school friends, two of my other best mates. He goes, because they're with you at school, like we need to figure out what the hell to do. So I'm like, no, I don't know what to say. So we all met up at PCYC. That place saved my life. Thank you, PCYC. And they got together and they like, okay, what happened? And all I remember was saying like, my uncle touched me and did something wrong, and it happened for many years and I don't know what to do. And I remember crying and they've never seen me cry. I'm always this strong girl. And they see me sad and crying. They're like, fuck, what do we do? And anyway, so all I remember is that conversation happening. And maybe like a week later, my best friend, Nancy, she gets dropped off to my house. Now, we don't drive, and she's dropped off. There's a knock at the door. My mum's like, oh, Nancy's here. And then her dad drives off. And I just went, oh, fuck. Like, I knew something. Like, that was it. And she walked in. She didn't even say a word. And I go, Mum, Dad, I need to speak to you, please. And they sent my sisters that my mum, Dad, like, they seen something was wrong. My face just dropped. They're like, yeah, let's go downstairs into the games room. Natalie and Jade, to my sisters, just stay upstairs. And I went downstairs. And if it wasn't for her, I would have probably not been pushed at that point to say something. And she's just like, we need to talk to you about something. Something's happened. And I just bawled my eyes out. And my mum and dad just sat very composed. They sat strong. They're freaking out. And I know I've had that conversation. They're freaking out. And then they like, okay. They're like, did something happen? I'm just nodding while I'm crying. And they're like, are you pregnant? I hung around with a lot of boys, and now in hindsight I laugh. They thought maybe something went wrong, and maybe I'm pregnant. No, that was not even the case. And I just shook my head. They're like, did one of your mates hurt you? And I shook my head. Did something happen? Like, did someone touch you? And they nodded. And then I nodded. And then they're like, was one of your friends? And it was almost like they bypassed that, if one of your friends, because they really didn't believe them. They're like, did someone from the family do it? And I nodded my head. And in that moment, I was like, are they going to figure this out? And they picked the person straight away. Straight away did they not name this person. So how did that happen? I don't know, but they didn't question if it was a cousin. They said, was it your uncle? And then they named him. And I nodded my head. And in that moment, I remember like this weight of the world just coming off my shoulders. And my dad walked up to me, sat right next to me, and he was welled up in the eyes, and he grabbed me and he hugged me and he goes, are you okay? That was his first response. And that was the reason why I love my dad so much, is because his first response was to protect me and to make sure I'm okay. Forget about fucking chasing that person, but just to make sure I was okay. And then my dad rang his dad and his mum, his brothers, his sisters, the whole family, and said, I need you at my house now. And he named the brother. He goes, he's done something wrong. And I've got family. So I lived in Western Sydney, so Cabramatta, and my family, I've got family in like Sylvania Waters, and I had family everywhere. So within like 10 minutes, people like rocked up to our house. And then I found out one of my aunties rang the brother, my uncle, and warned him and said, what have you done? What the hell? Like, she gave him a heads up and he disappeared. And that's where the hellhole starts. The abuse and the trauma was horrible, terrible, disgusting. It was wrong. But my hell started after that. And this is not to discourage people to speak out, but to realize that the reality of humans is disgusting. Humans are fucked. My parents spoke to the family. We asked every child that day, all the cousins, all the nieces and nephews, has anything ever happened to you? Did he ever touch you? And they all kind of like, then I don't know, I'm not sure. And like, they're very young and no, it didn't happen. The older cousins, we had like a big group of cousins that were the younger. I was the oldest of the younger group. And then we had like the ones in their mid-20s onwards or 30s onwards, and we spoke to them as well and asked them, like, did anything happen to you guys? And they're like, no, but he did give us like awkward signals, awkward hugs. They realized there was odd behavior. And that day I felt completely supported. And if that day continued, this would have been the easiest journey of healing from sexual abuse from a family member. But after that day, everyone went rotten. There was no support. People started questioning me. People started to protect him. People started to look after their best interests, and that's where the hell started. The reality is humans will do what's best for them, not for someone else. And it's very hard to find people that will care for you. I was so blessed that my mum and dad were by my side the entire time. And it was unfortunate that my grandparents were unable to be that my other aunties and uncles were unable to support that. So here's a little bit of family history. My dad's the oldest male in a Lebanese culture, in a Middle Eastern culture. It's a very big, proud moment that he's the eldest son. They had 3 daughters prior, but he's the eldest son. So his firstborn child is usually the golden child. That was me. So yes, I was this golden grandchild. I was always loved by them. I was looked up to. It was like I had this great expectation. I was very educated. I was very smart. I was intellectual. I could have conversation with my very educated grandfather. And so I was looked at this certain way. And even my dad was looked at this way. And it's a very unfortunate, stereotypical kind of culture, but that's what it was. From that turning into them first coming up to me and trying to manipulate me into not speaking about what happened. And crying and bashing tables and please don't, he's our son, you have to understand it, it is a mistake, but it's not happening anymore, it's okay, just don't tell anyone, put it under the rug, were the words my grandfather said to me. Put it under the rug and let's just move on. And I was like, no, this is not right, this is not going to be condoned. I was so powerful in my own being that my parents had developed and raised someone that knew what was right and wrong, and I was going to stand up against injustice. I was like, fuck no, I am not letting this happen. I don't care how much you think you love me or you love me, this is not love. And then this is where the war started. It was like me versus them. And my family was still trying to be involved with my grandparents. Mind you, the uncle's run away. We don't know where he is. I then have to go and make a police statement, and I have to do that in some part of this process. But with the family, my family was still trying to see my grandparents. I had the shits with my grandparents. I wouldn't go visit them. A couple of months go by, and we're like my dad's like, maybe you want to come see your grandparents, that. And no, I'm not going to support people that do not abide by my values. And I learned that at bloody 17 years old. I was like, no. So that's why I'm very harsh-headed. That's why I'm a very I call it cunty. I'm very abrupt. If you don't agree, I'm sorry, see you later. So I set my values straight, and I accepted that my parents or my dad had his own trauma and his own story to deal with, and I'm not going to judge him for that. And it took him his time to remove them from his life. But I said to my dad, I want nothing to do with these people. But then we realized they started harboring the criminal. They were actually hiding him there. So when my father or my parents would go over, or my sisters would go over, or when aunties and uncles went over, he was locked away in his bedroom and just hidden away, and they wouldn't have a clue. And one day got caught out by my dad, who spoke to his other brother and his sisters and said, they mentioned him. And he's like, what do you mean? They're like, he's been living here. And then my dad lost his shit. But still in that process, at some point, was trying to figure out how to keep a relationship with his parents and how to look after me. And over that period of time, my dad obviously disconnected again from his family. He realized they're lying and they're harboring this criminal. I then have the process of going to the police and making a police statement. And then this is where it gets serious, because the family realize I'm not fucking joking. I'm being serious, but they still want to protect him. They still don't want me to say nothing. So I went in as a teen to the police. I had to make my police statement. I had to take a counsellor with me. I was not going to take a parent in with me. So my parents went and spoke directly to my school, let them know what's happening, because I was in year 12. Let them know what's happening, why I'm having a couple of crises. And I was a very high functioning student. I was very good grades, very athletic. And all of a sudden I started just not wanting to do anything. So we went and had a conversation with the school. They found out what happened. They supported me. They gave me some mental health care with like a counsellor, which I absolutely hated, but it was necessary at the time. She went with me to make my statement. I nearly flipped the table at the police officer. I'll never forget that, because I was so angry how they were just asking me the question with no care. And I understand they were doing their job, but you're dealing with a kid and you're dealing with someone who's trying to figure out what the hell to tell you, and to tell you the truth in such a raw sense, because you're asking me for these details. So I made this police statement. I didn't have to go into court. They protected the victim at the time. They went and did the proceedings. The proceedings went on for 2 years. Eventually, he pleaded guilty to the 5 accounts that I had to present, but because he pleaded guilty by mental health issue or whatever, he said he had a gambling issue. He said he was abused as a kid, and I'm like, you're fucking kidding me. Like, this is what we get in this world. Like, he gets to be the victim now. And he got an 18-month suspended sentence and a 5-year AVO against me. And in that moment, like, when his family found out, I was hated. That was it. There was no two ways about it. I was never asked about. I was disowned. And before they had disowned them anyway. So it was like, yeah, cool. It just confirms the idea that there are shit humans out there, and blood does not mean anything. Blood is where the path of the lines you're born from, not who you choose to have in your life. So please understand that. So what was it? About a few years later, it took a while for them to be completely out of our lives, because we would see them at family events, because everyone would invite them, not the uncle, but the grandparents. I'd have nothing to do with them. At this point, my current husband, we were engaged, we were newlyweds, and we would see them at family functions, and I would not say hello, and I would not ask him to say hello. I had nothing to do with them, but I would start having this envious anger towards other people for being around these people, for condoning their behavior, for knowing what they've done to me, to my family, to put us as outcasts. And in those times, I realized no one gave a shit. It was just about what was suited for them. They didn't care that this scenario happened. And that's what taught me that people maybe don't even understand what it is, are so uneducated of what it is, that they hide, behind a lie and just think everything's normal. And then it took a few years, and my dad was broken all the time. They were destroying him. They manipulated and destroyed him. If they got groomed, they groomed him, they groomed me. And a few years later, my dad completely disconnected from his family. He said, fuck this, my family come first, who I choose in my life. And he removed himself completely from that family. So my grandparents were completely disowned. To the point, so you understand, where when my grandfather passed away a few years ago, we did not go to a funeral, we did not go to a cemetery, we did nothing. We were just told by other family members that he had died. And my grandmother passed away a year ago, and the same thing went. It was like, okay, it is what it is. Now, obviously, you've got to deal with that. I was still sad when they died, not because, I don't think it was because they died, because it was over. A release or a relief or some sort, I don't know. But those people manipulated and destroyed the family for so many years, and continued to destroy people because of the manipulation and the trauma they caused, because they were harboring such a bad person. And people would be like, wouldn't know the story, and then if they caught a glimpse of me somewhere, and I would be honest, and I'd be like, they're like, how's you? And I would say, no, he molested me, or he's a bad person, or I was blunt as. And people then realized, oh fuck, this family's fucked. So they lied. They lied for so long. They destroyed a family so harshly. And I think the biggest part of my abuse that fucked me was the aftermath. People who you believe should support you, not supporting you. People who should protect you, not protecting you. And then you understand people's values. And I think the biggest thing I learned is, like, if I had my opportunity to meet someone and know if they were meant to be in my life, I would grab them, take them into the deepest, darkest situation possible to experience. And however they respond, their values, their character would determine if they were meant to be in my life or not. Because sometimes you don't realize how shit humans are until, you know, the ship sinks. And then you're like, oh, they just jumped off the boat without me and they let me drown. Okay, cool, that's nice. So I don't want them in my life. I'm not going to spend the next 10 years finding out if you're a good person or not. I'm just going to cut through all the bullshit and say no. Like, that's why I will have a very small friendship circle, because as soon as someone starts delving into a realm that I'm just not interested in, I'm like, well, there's enough people in the bloody world. I'll just move on. I'll have a very tight-knit circle. So it's the experience itself created very imprinted behavioral patterns, things that masked me from being as open, and that protection mechanisms and survival modes that changed my human, that changed my character, that took many, many years of work to break habits, break this innate instinct to shut someone off just because they could be a threat. It took me a lot to build my own self-connection, my own self-awareness. It's not an easy journey. And this is someone, me, who spent from the age of 17, I'm 31, 32 coming up now, dealing with this, actively seeking out help, actively studying and learning about the mind, the physical being, about the human, about abuse, about trauma, and training it out and seeking out the right professional help. And for that many years, I've been doing that, and it's still hard. So this is not just a story to show you what the abuse is, how it happens, and then the aftermath of family, but the healing process takes fucking work. It took every bit of my soul. Even till this day, it still takes work. You will know, you'll be able to call your bullshit when you're having one of those days where you almost want to be that victim again. You're like, no, sorry, wake up, you know what I mean? It takes work, and if you've ignored the work, or if you think you're okay, but you see these behavioral patterns, or you see these traits, or you think that it's burned you deep down in your soul because if you lied to yourself, and this goes for anything, you have to deal with it. You can't avoid it. You can't just talk about it, you have to go and deal with it. There's so many ways to deal with it. Exercise and human movement and strength training was my biggest way. First it was an escape, and then it became a death sentence because I made myself ill and unwell, and you realize that you're just escaping. But once you do it right, it becomes this beautiful thing that now I can actually work on myself. I can be a better human. I don't have to be affected by these poor valued humans, these people that can't stand up for what's right. And when you speak to other victims, you realize the abuse destroyed them, but the aftermath was worse. The lies, the hiding it, the worrying if everyone's judging you, worrying about other people protecting the predator, or keeping the predator in their life because they don't think it is that real. I had to tell you this story in its rawest form just so you could understand how horrid it is. Now, I know there are way worse stories out there. No one should ever judge their story versus someone else. Children are raped. Newborns are raped. Like, there is the worst of the worst scenario, and they actually fucking exist. And there is this side where people go, oh, but it's not as bad as it could be. It's like, no, fuck you, it is bad. It should not happen. And hold the standard. Stand up for the fucking injustice out there, because if we can make this a conversation where people are okay to have that chat, that something went wrong, people are not going to have to detail exactly what happened. They're just going to be able to say, hey, I was abused and it's wrong. And then people can stand up for them. But to have people not understand it, people are like, oh, what is abuse? I don't understand. What do you mean? And it's like, okay, let me explain it to you. Let me show you the scenario. Now, I've been very gentle in my description. And I know it's still triggering, and I know it's still quite disgusting. But I've only given you small snippets. But think of that over 7 years continuously happening. But then after that, for 17 to what am I now? 30, my 30s. For over 15 years, my life becoming a wrecking ball because of the response and the reaction of other humans who are uneducated, uninformed, who have poor morals and values. That was the biggest effect. So if we can educate and empower a world so that they can understand what is wrong, what it actually is, how the fuck it affects people, the damage maybe we can get some more open-eyed humans, more humans that are better, humans that can actually make change, that can help support. My story was not a matter of, oh, this is about me. This is why would I want to tell you the darkest, deepest secrets of my soul? It's nothing of the sense, and it's not easy. A lot of people go, I commend you. No, I'm here just because I have a story and it can help others. I'm not doing this to be famous. I'm not doing this for any of the sense. I'm doing this so maybe one person hears it and goes, oh, fuck. That's what that is. Shit, I've experienced that. Or shit, I've seen that. Or shit, I know that happened to that person. Or shit, it's happening to me. Maybe I need help. Maybe we can help. Maybe something. Maybe we can make some change. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to know, as detailed as it may be, I'm happy to share. I know I've gone in little tangents in this episode because I've been confronted with some memories right now and some overwhelming feelings because I haven't had to use the story in that depth since the day I made that police statement. But I appreciate if you've listened. I appreciate if you've taken this on board and realized how deep and dark this story is and how much worse there is that exists out there. But again, not better or worse. There are just shit stories out there. If you've gone through something and you need some help, or you just need a vent, or you need to just express, please reach out. If you have the opportunity and you feel comfortable enough, share this story. Just post it up, share it, get people to listen. Even if they listen to the first minute and just realize, oh fuck, this is an interesting, bad topic. Okay, cool. Please do that for me. The more I can spread this, the better. I know I have a lot of friends out there with great followings and whatnot. Please, if you guys could just share it, let more people know this is relevant to every human. If you are a human, this is relevant to you. I don't care if your realm or your niche is something completely, you deal with a different topic or different world, or, you have a brand of some sort. It's relevant. You deal with humans, so it is relevant. It is absolutely relevant. So please share it. If you have questions or concerns, please message me. I'll respond when I can, and I will get back to you, whether they become videos or whatnot. And I hope you learned something. This is to end the series for the Truth Quoted on the topic of child sexual abuse. This was my story, and I hope you learned something, and I hope it helped.